Donald Trump is 79 years old. He's the oldest sitting president in American history. He's got a war going on in the Middle East, the most turbulent economy in years, and the weight of basically everything happening in the world right now sitting on his desk every single morning. So here's a question that nobody in Washington really wants to say out loud. What actually happens if Trump is gone tomorrow? Not eventually, tomorrow. Because unlike a lot of countries, the United States actually has a clear answer to that. We have rules, we have a line, we have a plan. The question is, who's on that line? What do they actually believe? And would any of it really go smoothly? That's what we're getting into today. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to look at American politics very differently. Let's start with the basics, because most people actually don't know how this works. The United States has had 8 presidents die in office. 8. 4 of them were assassinated. 4 died of natural causes. And every single time, one thing happened immediately. The vice president took over. That's not a coincidence. That's the Constitution doing exactly what it was designed to do. The 25th Amendment is crystal clear on this. If the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, the vice president becomes president. Not acting president, not temporary president. President, full stop. Same desk, same nuclear codes, same authority. And if somehow the vice president can't serve either, the line keeps going. Speaker of the House, President pro tempore of the Senate. Then it moves to the cabinet in the order those departments were created. Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, and so on down the list. Now here's the thing most people miss. That line isn't just a list of names on a piece of paper somewhere. These are real people with real politics, real ambitions, and in some cases, real disagreements with each other. So when you ask who takes power if Trump disappears tomorrow, the legal answer and the political reality are two very different conversations. Let's start with the legal answer. First in line, J.D. Vance. At 40 years old, J.D. Vance is already the 3rd youngest vice president in American history. And right now, most political analysts consider him one of the most powerful vice presidents the country has ever seen. That's not just hype. That's people who study this for a living, saying Vance has more influence in this White House than Dick Cheney had in the Bush years. And Cheney was practically running a shadow government. Here's what makes Vance interesting. His story is not what you'd expect from someone standing one heartbeat from the presidency. He grew up in Appalachian, Ohio, in a family that was, by his own description, pretty chaotic. His grandmother raised him. He joined the Marines out of high school, served in Iraq, came back, got into Ohio State, then Yale Law School, wrote a memoir called Hillbilly Elegy that became a bestseller because it gave voice to working-class white America in a way that almost nobody else had done. And then, and this is the part that still trips people up, he spent years absolutely hammering Donald Trump. He reportedly asked a friend whether Trump was a cynical a-hole like Nixon or something far worse. He called himself a never-Trumper. He was openly skeptical. Then he completely changed. By 2022, he was running for Senate in Ohio with Trump's full endorsement. He won. By July 2024, Trump picked him as his running mate, reportedly influenced by Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Trump's own sons, Don Jr. and Eric. And now he's the vice president of the United States, publicly saying things like, "I feel very confident the president is in good shape," while also quietly telling USA Today that if there were ever a terrible tragedy, he's ready. That's a very deliberate choice of words, because Vance has been asked, more than once, whether he's prepared to step into the Oval Office. And his answer is always the same. He praises Trump's health in the same breath that he confirms he could handle it. He's not hiding from the question, he's threading a needle. So what would a Vance presidency actually look like? Political scientists who've studied him say it would be, and I'm summarizing here, Trump but more ideological. One expert at Boston University described it as Trump on steroids. Less bombastic personality maybe, but the policies? Potentially even further right on immigration and social issues. Vance is deeply connected to the intellectual wing of the MAGA movement, the people who actually wrote out what a conservative government should look like in granular detail. He literally wrote the foreword to a book by the head of the Heritage Foundation. On foreign policy, he's been notably skeptical of America's role as the world's policeman. Back in 2022, he said openly that he didn't really care what happened to Ukraine one way or another. He's been described by foreign policy researchers as someone who would push a more nationalist, China-focused approach, and would likely be far less interested in maintaining traditional alliances than even Trump has been. The bottom line on Vance: if Trump disappears tomorrow, Vance becomes president by the end of the day. That's certain. What's less certain is whether the MAGA base, who worships Trump personally and not just his politics, would accept Vance as a real successor, or just a placeholder. More on that in a minute. Now let's talk about who's number 2 in the line, because this one is genuinely wild to think about. If both Trump and Vance were somehow gone at the same time, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson becomes president. Mike Johnson is a 52-year-old congressman from Louisiana. And look, I want to be fair here. He's not a household name. He's not someone who walks into a room and you immediately think future president. He became Speaker in late 2023, basically because Republicans couldn't agree on anyone else after Kevin McCarthy got ousted, and he was the compromise choice. He survived his own Speaker election at the start of 2025 by the absolute slimmest margin possible, 218 to 215. That's not a commanding mandate. That's barely surviving. But here's what matters. Johnson held the speakership with Trump's active personal help. Trump was literally on the phone during the vote, calling Republican holdouts, applying pressure to get them to fall in line. Johnson is deeply loyal to Trump's agenda and has committed to pushing it through Congress at every turn. A Johnson presidency would almost certainly try to continue Trump's domestic policies, tax cuts, government downsizing, immigration enforcement. But Johnson doesn't have the political personality or the base support to hold the MAGA coalition together the way Trump does. He'd be governing from a position of institutional legitimacy, not personal loyalty. And in today's political environment, those are two very different things. Third in line is the President pro tempore of the Senate, which is currently a largely ceremonial title held by the longest-serving senator in the majority party. This person is technically in the line of succession, but realistically, nobody expects this to matter, unless we're talking about some kind of catastrophic scenario that takes out multiple people at once. After that, it's the cabinet. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is 4th in line. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent is 5th. Secretary of Defense 6th. These are all competent people in their respective roles. But the reality is that the further down the line you go, the less political legitimacy and public recognition the person has. And in a moment of national crisis, legitimacy matters just as much as legal authority. Here's where this gets really interesting, and this is the part most people don't think about. The legal succession is clean, but the political succession? That's a completely different animal. Donald Trump hasn't just built a political movement. He's built a personality-driven political movement. The energy behind MAGA isn't attached to a platform or a party. It's attached to a person. Trump's supporters don't just vote for him. They trust him in a way that goes beyond normal political loyalty. He speaks to them directly. He's their guy.
JD Vance has been building hard to inherit that connection. A Yale poll from late 2025 found that among Republican voters aged 18 to 34, Vance was pulling 51% support as a future presidential candidate. His closest competitors couldn't even break double digits. That's a significant number, but there's a critical challenge Vance faces that no amount of preparation fully solves. History is not kind to vice presidents trying to get elected on their own. Think about it. Since the country was founded, only 4 sitting vice presidents have ever been elected president in their own right. 4 in over 2 centuries. By contrast, 8 vice presidents got the job because their president died. So if Vance takes over because of Trump's death, he probably holds the White House at least through the end of the term. If he tries to win the presidency on his own in 2028, history says that's a much harder road. Now, let's zoom out for a second and talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention: the stability question. America is not Russia. There's no power vacuum here. There's no clan of oligarchs fighting over who controls the nuclear codes. The transition system genuinely works. We've done it 8 times. Every single time a president has died in office, power transferred within hours, calmly and constitutionally. But stability doesn't mean simple, and it doesn't mean consequence-free. Think about what happened when FDR died and Harry Truman took over in 1945. Truman had no idea the Manhattan Project even existed when he was vice president. Within weeks of taking office, he had to make one of the most consequential decisions in human history, whether to use atomic weapons against Japan. Or think about Lyndon Johnson taking over after JFK's assassination in 1963, boarding Air Force One to take the oath of office, and then steering the country through one of the most turbulent decades in American history. The person who takes over doesn't just inherit an office. They inherit every ongoing crisis, every half-finished negotiation, every military operation already in motion, every relationship the previous president had built or burned with foreign leaders. They inherit all of it, all at once, with no transition period. In today's environment, that means whoever takes over from Trump immediately has to deal with the situation in the Middle East, ongoing trade tensions with China, a fractured relationship with traditional European allies, and a domestic political base that is arguably more tribal and personality-driven than at any point in modern history. Here's the thing nobody wants to say directly, but it hangs over all of this. Trump is 79. He is the oldest president the country has ever had. His term doesn't end until January 2029. If he serves the full term, he will be 83 years old when he leaves office. Vance himself noted publicly that Trump has incredible energy, but he said it in the same breath as confirming he's ready to step up if needed. That's not an accident. That's a man who is paying very close attention to what is happening around him. Republican insiders, according to reporting from late 2025, have been quietly looking toward Vance for months. Not because they want Trump gone, but because they're political professionals, and political professionals plan for every scenario. Some of Trump's most loyal supporters in Congress have already begun positioning themselves for what comes after. Whether that's 2029, when the term ends naturally, or sooner, nobody is saying that out loud, but the machinery is moving.
So let's bring this all home. If Donald Trump disappeared tomorrow, here's exactly what would happen. Within hours, J.D. Vance would take the oath of office and become the 48th President of the United States. He would immediately hold a press conference to project stability and continuity. The markets would react, probably sharply, at least initially. Allies around the world would be on the phone asking what this means for existing commitments. Adversaries would be watching very closely to see if there's any sign of weakness or hesitation. Vance would then nominate a new vice president who would need to be confirmed by Congress. He'd keep most of Trump's cabinet in place, at least initially, and he would almost certainly try to position himself as the natural continuation of everything Trump started. Not a break from it, but the next chapter. Whether that would work politically is a different question entirely. Because here's the honest truth. J.D. Vance is smart. He's ideologically committed. He's been one of the most active and powerful vice presidents in modern history. But he is not Donald Trump. And a significant portion of the people who elected Trump did so because of Trump specifically. The personality, the defiance, the specific way he talks and fights and refuses to back down. Can J.D. Vance replicate that? Can anyone? That's the question that keeps Republican strategists up at night. And it's the question that would define American politics for the next decade if the scenario we're discussing ever actually happened. The constitutional line of succession is one of the clearest things the American system has ever produced. The political reality underneath it is one of the most complicated. What we know for certain is this: the system works. It has worked every time it's been needed. Power transfers. The government keeps running. The country keeps going. What we don't know is what comes after. Whether J.D. Vance can hold the coalition together. Whether he can win on his own. Whether MAGA survives as a political force without the man who created it. Or whether it transforms into something new. Those answers don't exist yet. They'll be written by whatever happens next. But if you wanted to know who takes power if Donald Trump disappears tomorrow, now you know. It's J.D. Vance, the former Never-Trumper who out-MAGA'd almost everyone. The Ohio kid from Appalachia who is one heartbeat away from the most powerful office on earth. And whether that's a reassuring answer or a complicated one probably depends on where you're standing. If this video made you think, share it with someone who thinks they've got American politics figured out. Chances are they haven't thought about any of this, and that's exactly why it matters.